begin, sir, by asking you straight, escalation or deal, which way is this war heading according to you right now?
Well, thank you very much, first of all, for the invitation. It's great to be with you. And just to alleviate some pressure, you're not the first, nor will you be the last one who mispronounces my odd Greek name.
Yes.
Um, but looking at it, really, it's in the hands of President Trump. So will there be escalation or will they be just an off ramp? And I think we really need to see how this is viewed from within kind of the American political perspective. I think if the president of the US delays the off ramp, his off ramp, it becomes more and more difficult for him to avoid using some kind of land boots on the ground presence
Yeah.
in Iran. And that complicates matters because we're still, as we have seen historically, at the early stage of this crisis. Similarly, other crises, such as the oil embargo in 1973, 2003 Iraq invasion, it took a very long time to get out of it. So, if we're at the beginning of this, I'll give you a hint. In 1973, the oil embargo lasted for about 5.5 to 6 months to end it. So, do we go in or do we go out? This is really in the hands of President Trump. And he uses the taco as an option, the chickening out approach, but also it's not an easy win for him. He needs to show to the American public that he is winning and to himself. And that is not quite understandable by a lot of people and himself as well. So, as he goes along, there is a plan. But one thing for sure, when you have American troops collecting themselves in the region, in the Strait of Hormuz,
Yes.
or across in the UAE and other places, it really signifies that they must do something. They're not there for the show.
Sir, Iran is still holding the Strait of Hormuz since you mentioned it, and that appears to be the fulcrum of where the war stands at this point of time. Oil at $114 a barrel rising. Do you think Iran has the leverage at this point of time? Because Iran has been dismissing practically everything that Trump has been saying so far. They're practically saying, bring it on. We see your troops, bring it on. That's what Iran is saying.
Well, this is exactly to your point how Iran sees the world. And Iran, the longer this continues, begins to be a winner of the war, not necessarily of the battle. The regime is intransigent. The regime is not going to appear weak. It is becoming more emboldened by what is happening.
Yeah.
And even if the citizens, we can say, are not all of them supportive of the regime, the citizens feel the brunt of all of this. So the regime is going to make it difficult. They will make it difficult on the US to find an easy way out because they know that the longer this lasts, the stronger they appear globally.
Yeah. We heard yesterday from the White House that, Trump may want the Arab states to actually foot the bill for this war, on the lines of what happened during the 1990s Gulf War. Of course, the circumstances were very different at that time. Do you think that'll happen this time? Do you think that's a possibility at all?
Well, one way or another, the Gulf will pay, be it directly or indirectly. And I'll give you some examples. Directly, they might not pay for the bill, but they will pay for different types of defenses or additional defenses, Patriots, THAAD missiles, additional restructuring of their defense procurement standing, be it with other partners, be it with the US, Ukraine, China, and so forth, but they'll have to rebuild their defenses. So indirectly, they'll pay for it. Now, directly, they will avoid any involvement because that will give a rubber stamp to the US and Israel, which would love to go and say that this was an allied force, a force that came from the Arab world, and the Gulf thinks long term. The Gulf does not want to be involved in a protracted situation.
Yeah.
Having said this, if the Houthis in Yemen decide to hit directly Saudi Arabia, I'm very convinced that Saudi Arabia will come in and strike, and they will strike with force and impunity.
Yeah.
I don't think that there is a way for anybody out of this, whether directly or indirectly, they'll pay for the cost of this. And it's becoming to be a huge cost on the Gulf countries. And the Gulf countries have not asked for this war.
Yeah. No, it's very interesting you mentioned that because, like you rightly said, Saudi Arabia, among the other states, has come under attack. We've seen 2 attacks on Aramco. We've seen the Prince Sultan base come under attack. Most recently, an attack which actually elicited the Iranian foreign minister as saying that, the Gulf states are brother nations to Iran, and that the Iranian strikes on Saudi soil were only to target US assets in those countries, which, as you know, sir, is not entirely true. But in your view, how has this war affected existing relations between Iran and the Gulf states?
Well, it's like the relatives that we don't like, but we have to deal with them. And Iran is in the region, they will not disappear. And so is Israel, they will not disappear. So the Arab world will need to make sense and peace with Israel at some point. And there has to be a resolution of that. But to go back to your excellent question, the Gulf has been hit, both military targets and civilian targets. In the case of Saudi Arabia, but also the UAE and Qatar, infrastructure, gas facilities, oil facilities have been destroyed. The aluminum plants recently, civilian targets, the airports, not to forget, they have hit airports in Dubai. The airport in Dubai has been impacted several times. So I wouldn't say that Iran is neutral. And also remember, Iran has been planning for this response for quite some time.
Yeah.
So I don't envisage that the Gulf states will be involved, but the Gulf states eventually they'll have to make some kind of an arrangement, peace, and move forward. In this situation, it seems that the regime is going to stay. There's going to be no regime change. Even President Trump goes out and says that the regime has changed. The regime is the same. The forces are there, they're waiting, and they will put a hefty fight against the US. So the Gulf is thinking, how do I deal with this with minimum damage? The problem is, as long as the strait is shut and Iran is doing this,
Yes.
they're hijacking the entire world. But so is President Trump, if I may add.
Yeah.
So is he hijacking also the world, because this is something that the Gulf states, again, I will emphasize, said they don't want to see, and there are severe regional repercussions, which, in any case, you see today in India and other parts of the world. We all feel the destruction that this war is creating in our pockets.
Very true. I wanna bring you now, sir, to the nuclear question. It's on everyone's mind, but nobody really discusses it threadbare because there is a growing sense that Iran may be convinced now more than ever before that only owning a nuclear weapon can guarantee its future safety, which is ironic given what one of the war aims has actually been. You have Iran's hardliners, as you know, now openly calling for a nuclear weapon as a kind of strategic priority in that country. In your view, sir, has this war made that more likely, not less? I know it's complicated because operations are on right now. Even last night, we saw an airstrike on the Isfahan facilities as well. But how do you see this?
Well, I think you said it very adequately and aptly. And if I may add to all of this, is that true, there is a complicated factor, which is that we have a regime and it still has 400 or so kilos of enriched uranium, and something has to be done. Now, this regime, as long as we keep on having the same regime, it will become more forceful and emboldened to the idea that maybe this nuclear enriched material needs to be used.
Yeah.
And here comes the question, if the US becomes bogged down in a land war and there is no quick resolution, maybe the US uses some sort of tactical nuclear missile. I give that a very low chance, but so is Iran. It could fasten their approach to a nuclear bomb